I stared at the hotel receptionist in disbelief. What do you mean there's no reservation under Martinez? My mother stood behind me, feigning shock perfectly. Oh, honey, I must have forgotten to book your room. She gasped, her Oscar-worthy performance fooling no one but herself. 24 years of manipulation had taught me to recognize her schemes, but this felt different, more calculated, more cruel. Within 1 hour of this innocent mistake, my phone would explode with calls that would shatter everything I believed about my family forever. But first, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you've ever dealt with family drama and subscribe because this revenge story is about to get absolutely wild. Standing in that hotel lobby watching my mother's theatrical performance, I felt the familiar sting of being the family scapegoat. This was supposed to be my cousin Sarah's wedding weekend in Napa Valley. I had flown in from Chicago specifically for this celebration, taking precious vacation days from my demanding job as a forensic accountant. Mom, you literally texted me the confirmation number 3 weeks ago, I said, pulling out my phone to show her our message thread. But as I scrolled through our conversations, something ice cold settled in my stomach. The confirmation text was gone, deleted, recently deleted based on the gap in our message timeline. I really don't remember sending that, sweetheart, she replied smoothly, her voice dripping with false concern. Maybe you're thinking of a different trip. The hotel manager approached a sympathetic expression on his face. Miss Martinez, I'm terribly sorry, but we're completely booked for the wedding block. It's peak season, and with the Patterson-Williams celebration, every room in town is occupied. Patterson-Williams, Sarah's wedding. My family had apparently secured an entire block of rooms months ago, yet somehow mine had vanished into thin air. However, the manager continued, there might be one option. We just had a last-minute cancellation in our standard room. It's not part of the wedding block, but it's available for tonight only. I reached for my credit card, but my mother's hand shot out like a viper grasping my wrist. Oh, that's far too expensive for just one night, Sophia. Why don't you just drive back to San Francisco? It's only an hour and a half. An hour and a half through winding mountain roads in the dark after a full day of travel. The same suggestion she'd never make to my golden child brother Marcus or my cousin Sarah. The same dismissive attitude she'd shown me my entire life, always making me feel like an afterthought and inconvenience. But I was done being the family doormat. I'll take the room, I told the manager firmly, pulling my wrist free from my mother's grip. Her face cycled through several emotions: surprise, anger, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Fear. As I signed the registration paperwork, my phone buzzed with a text from my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister. Honey, can you call me when you get settled? It's important. 30 minutes later, sitting in my overpriced but thankfully clean hotel room, I dialed Aunt Linda's number. She answered on the first ring. Sophia, thank God. Listen to me very carefully. Your mother didn't forget to book your room. She canceled it yesterday morning and pocketed the refund. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? I was there when she made the call. She claimed you had decided not to come to the wedding after all. She said you were too busy with work and couldn't be bothered with family events anymore. My hands began to shake. That's insane! Why would she do that? Linda's sigh was heavy with years of accumulated frustration, because she used the money to upgrade her own room to a suite. She wanted the fancy accommodations for herself and your father, but the wedding budget was already stretched thin, so she sacrificed your reservation to fund her little luxury. But that wasn't even the worst part. There's more, honey. She's been telling everyone at the wedding that you didn't come because you think you're too good for the family, now that you have your fancy job in Chicago. She's been playing the victim all weekend, talking about how successful children often abandon their roots. The room spun around me. Not only had my mother stolen money meant for my accommodation, but she was actively sabotaging my reputation within our extended family. She was painting me as an ungrateful, elitist daughter who had turned her back on her humble beginnings. Linda, are you absolutely certain about this? Sweetheart, I heard the phone call. She specifically told the hotel to cancel the reservation under Sophia Martinez and process the refund to her credit card. She said she had your permission to handle your booking changes. Fraud. Plain and simple fraud. My mother had committed financial fraud against me while simultaneously destroying my reputation through calculated lies and emotional manipulation. And she'd done it all with the confidence of someone who believed I was too weak, too well trained in family loyalty to ever fight back. She had gravely miscalculated. As a forensic accountant, I specialized in uncovering financial deception. I knew exactly how to document fraud, how to trace money trails, and how to build ironclad cases against people who thought they were cleverer than the system. My mother had just declared war against someone uniquely equipped to destroy her financially and socially. But first, I needed to understand the full scope of her deception. Linda, I need you to tell me everything. Every lie she's told, every manipulation, every financial irregularity you've witnessed, and I need you to be willing to go on record with what you know. There was a long pause before my aunt responded. Sophia, you're scaring me. What are you planning? I'm planning to show this family exactly what happens when they mistake kindness for weakness. My mother wants to play games with my money and my reputation. Fine, but she's about to learn that I don't play games, I end them. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, perfect for a wedding, and even more perfect for the systematic destruction of my mother's carefully constructed facade. I had spent the night documenting everything Linda had told me, cross-referencing her account with my own experiences, and building a comprehensive timeline of my mother's deceptive behavior. But I needed more than just Linda's testimony. I needed proof. At breakfast in the hotel restaurant, I spotted my cousin Michael Sarah's older brother and the family's unofficial tech expert. Unlike the rest of my relatives, Michael had always treated me with genuine respect and had often expressed frustration with the way my mother manipulated family dynamics. Michael, can I talk to you privately? I approached his table where he sat alone scrolling through his phone. Sophia, I thought you weren't coming to the wedding. Your mom said you were too busy with work. His expression was genuinely confused, not accusatory. That's exactly what I need to talk to you about. My mother lied to you. She lied to everyone. I spent the next 20 minutes laying out the entire story. The canceled reservation, the pocketed refund, the campaign of character assassination. Michael's expression grew darker with each revelation. That's incredibly messed up even for Aunt Carmen, he said, using my mother's first name. But how do you prove it? I need access to the hotel's booking system records, and I need someone to help me gather evidence of her lies. Are you willing to help me expose this? Michael didn't hesitate. Absolutely. This stops now. I'm sick of watching her treat you like garbage while playing the martyr. Our first stop was the hotel's front desk where I presented my credentials as a forensic accountant and explained the situation to the manager I'd spoken with the previous day. While I couldn't legally compel them to show me the booking records, I could request documentation of the cancellation for potential legal proceedings. The manager, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding in his lobby, agreed to print out the booking history for my original reservation. The documents showed exactly what Linda had described, a reservation made 3 months prior, confirmed and paid for, then canceled exactly 26 hours earlier with a full refund processed to Carmen Martinez's credit card. But that was just the beginning. Michael, I need you to help me with something that might seem underhanded, but it's completely legal. I need to record conversations with family members about what my mother has been telling them. Like a sting operation. Exactly like a sting operation. I need documented evidence of her lies, and I need witnesses who can testify to her pattern of manipulation. We started with my cousin Jennifer, Sarah's maid of honor, who was getting her hair done at the hotel spa. Michael approached her casually while I sat nearby with my phone recording. Hey, Jen, I ran into Sophia this morning. I thought she wasn't coming to the wedding. Oh, she decided to show up at the last minute, Jennifer replied, her voice carrying a note of judgment. Aunt Carmen was so disappointed. She said Sophia called her 3 days ago and said she was too important now to waste time on family weddings. Carmen was heartbroken, especially after all the money she spent on Sophia's reservation. Michael and I exchanged glances. Wait, Carmen spent money on Sophia's reservation. Of course, she paid for everyone's hotel rooms as her gift to the bride and groom. She was so excited about treating the whole family to a beautiful weekend, but then Sophia just threw it back in her face. My blood boiled, but I maintained my composure. This was exactly the evidence I needed. Not only had my mother stolen my money, but she was claiming credit for paying for accommodations she'd actually canceled and refunded to herself. We repeated this process with 4 more family members throughout the morning. Each conversation revealed additional layers of my mother's deception. She had told my Uncle Roberto that I was embarrassed by the family's modest background and didn't want to be associated with them anymore. She told my cousin Lisa that I had demanded she upgrade my room to a suite, or I wouldn't attend, then acted offended when she couldn't afford it. Every single story painted me as an entitled, ungrateful daughter, while positioning my mother as a generous, long-suffering parent whose sacrifices were unappreciated by her selfish child. By noon, I had recorded evidence of systematic defamation, documented financial fraud, and testimony from multiple witnesses who could verify my mother's lies, but I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I wanted to wait for the perfect moment. Maximum impact, maximum witnesses, maximum humiliation. That moment came during the pre-wedding family brunch. The entire extended family had gathered in the hotel's private dining room for a casual meal before the afternoon ceremony. My mother held court at the head table, regaling everyone with stories of her generous contributions to the wedding weekend and her disappointment in children who didn't appreciate family values. "It's just so heartbreaking," she was saying as I entered the room. "When you raise a child with love and sacrifice only to have them turn their back on you when they think they're too successful for their roots." Perfect. I walked directly to the center of the room and raised my voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Mom, I need you to clarify something for everyone here." The room fell silent. My mother's face went pale, but she quickly recovered her composure. "Of course, sweetheart. What do you need clarified?" "I need you to tell everyone exactly how you paid for my hotel reservation for this wedding." Her eyes darted around the room, clearly calculating her options. "Well, as I mentioned, I covered everyone's accommodations as my gift to Sarah and her fiancé." "That's interesting because according to the hotel's records, which I have right here," I pulled out the printed documentation, "you canceled my reservation yesterday morning and processed a full refund to your own credit card. You committed fraud against me and then lied to our entire family about both your generosity and my character." The silence in the room was deafening. My mother's carefully constructed mask finally slipped, revealing the panicked, cornered liar beneath. "Sophia, I think you're confused." "I'm not confused, Mom. I'm a forensic accountant. This is literally what I do for a living. I investigate financial crimes and expose people who think they're smarter than the paper trail they leave behind." I turned to address the room. "For those of you who are interested in the truth, my mother has spent the last 2 days telling you that I'm too selfish and entitled to attend my cousin's wedding. In reality, she stole the money from my hotel reservation to upgrade herself to a suite, then launched a character assassination campaign to cover up her theft." The aftermath of my public revelation was swift and decisive. The room erupted in shocked murmurs as family members began connecting dots they'd previously ignored. My Aunt Linda stood up immediately, her face flushed with righteous anger. "Carmen, I told you this was going to backfire," Linda announced, her voice carrying across the stunned silence. "I warned you that Sophia was too smart to fall for your manipulations forever." Uncle Roberto, my father's brother and typically the family peacekeeper, shook his head in disgust. "Carmen, what you did is theft, plain and simple theft from your own daughter." But my mother, trapped and desperate, doubled down on her lies with the ferocity of a cornered animal. "You're all being dramatic. This is just a misunderstanding. Sophia is blowing this completely out of proportion because she's embarrassed about not wanting to come to the wedding in the first place." That's when my cousin Michael stepped forward, his phone in his hand. "Actually, Aunt Carmen, we have recordings of you spreading lies about Sophia all weekend long. Would you like me to play them for everyone here?" The color drained completely from my mother's face. She hadn't realized that her systematic campaign of defamation had been documented, recorded, and preserved as evidence. Her eyes darted frantically around the room, looking for allies who were rapidly disappearing. My cousin Sarah, the bride herself, stood up from her table. "Aunt Carmen, I trusted you to handle the family accommodations for my wedding weekend. You told me everyone was taken care of. Now I find out you've been stealing from family members and lying to cover it up." The weight of Sarah's disappointment was devastating. This was supposed to be her perfect weekend, and my mother's schemes had turned it into a family crisis that would overshadow the celebration for years to come. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of collapsing under the pressure, my mother's desperation transformed into vicious retaliation. "Fine!" she screamed, her voice breaking with rage. "You want the truth? The truth is that I'm tired of pretending to be proud of a daughter who thinks she's better than her family. The truth is that Sophia has been judging us and looking down on us for years, and I was protecting the rest of you from her condescension." The room fell into stunned silence, but this time it was different. Instead of shock at revelation, it was shock at the depth of my mother's cruelty. She had just confirmed everything I'd accused her of, while simultaneously revealing the twisted justifications she'd been using to rationalize her behavior. My cousin Jennifer, who had been one of my mother's most vocal supporters an hour earlier, stood up with tears in her eyes. "Aunt Carmen, that's your daughter. How can you say such horrible things about your own child?" But my mother was beyond reasoning now. Years of resentment and jealousy had finally exploded into the open, and she seemed determined to burn every bridge in sight. "My daughter abandoned this family the moment she got her fancy degree and her fancy job. She thinks she's too sophisticated for our simple lives, too educated for our humble celebrations. Well, congratulations, Sophia. You've finally gotten what you wanted. You've turned everyone against me to make yourself look like the victim." That's when I realized something crucial. This wasn't really about the hotel reservation or even the money. This was about my mother's deep-seated insecurity about my success and her fear that my achievements somehow diminished her worth in the family hierarchy. She had been systematically sabotaging me not out of greed, but out of a toxic combination of jealousy and self-loathing. Understanding her motivation didn't excuse her behavior, but it gave me the insight I needed to build a coalition of family members who had been subjected to similar manipulation over the years. "Who else has Mom lied to or stolen from?" I asked the room directly, because I'm starting to realize this isn't an isolated incident. The floodgates opened. My cousin David revealed that my mother had borrowed $500 from him 6 months earlier for a family emergency that turned out to be non-existent. She'd used the money for a weekend spa retreat while telling him his grandmother was sick and needed medication. My Aunt Patricia shared that my mother had promised to contribute $200 toward our grandfather's birthday celebration, then never paid while taking credit for organizing the entire event. Uncle Roberto admitted that my mother had been spreading rumors about his wife's spending habits while simultaneously asking to borrow money from them regularly. Pattern after pattern of financial manipulation, emotional blackmail, and systematic lies designed to maintain my mother's position as the family martyr while extracting resources and sympathy from everyone around her. By the time we finished sharing stories, 13 different family members had experienced some form of manipulation theft or defamation at my mother's hands. The scope of her deception was staggering, and the impact on family relationships had been devastating for years. But now, for the first time, all of her victims were in the same room sharing their experiences and realizing they weren't alone. The isolation that had made us vulnerable to her manipulation was broken, replaced by a network of mutual support and shared determination to hold her accountable. My cousin Sarah, despite the stress of her wedding day, stepped up as an unexpected leader in organizing our response. "This ends today," she announced firmly. "Aunt Carmen, you're going to pay back every penny you've stolen from family members, you're going to publicly apologize for the lies you've spread, and you're going to get professional help for whatever is driving this behavior." My mother looked around the room, desperately searching for a single ally, a single person who might defend her or offer her an escape from the consequences of her actions. She found none. My father, who had been silent throughout the entire confrontation, finally spoke. "Carmen, I can't defend this. I won't defend this. You've lied to me about the family finances, you've lied about Sophia, and apparently you've been lying about everything for years." The man who had stood by my mother's side for 27 years was finally seeing her clearly, and the disappointment in his voice was heartbreaking. But even as our alliance strengthened and my mother's isolation became complete, I knew this was just the beginning. Someone who had spent years perfecting the art of manipulation wouldn't surrender easily, and desperate people often become dangerous people. I was right to be cautious. The worst betrayal was still to come. 3 hours after our family confrontation, I thought we had won. My mother had retreated to her upgraded suite in humiliated silence. My father was finally seeing her true nature, and our coalition of family members was united in demanding accountability and change. I should have known it was too easy. The first sign of trouble came during the wedding ceremony itself. As Sarah walked down the aisle in her stunning white gown, I noticed my mother whispering urgently to my cousin Marcus, my older brother who had flown in that morning from Los Angeles. Marcus kept glancing in my direction with an expression I couldn't quite read, disappointment mixed with something that looked suspiciously like pity. After the ceremony, as guests mingled during the cocktail hour, Marcus approached me with the confident swagger he'd inherited from our mother's side of the family. "Sophia, we need to talk," he said, his tone serious and vaguely condescending. "Mom filled me in on what happened at brunch, and I think you owe her an apology." I stared at him in disbelief. "I owe her an apology, Marcus. She committed fraud against me, and then spent 2 days lying to our entire family about my character." "That's not how I see it," he replied smoothly. "What I see is a daughter who humiliated her mother in front of the entire family over a simple miscommunication about hotel reservations. Mom made an honest mistake, and instead of handling it privately like an adult, you turned it into a public spectacle." The words hit me like a physical slap. This was my brother, the person who had supposedly been on my side my entire life, who had witnessed years of our mother's favoritism toward him and her systematic undermining of me. Yet here he was not only defending her behavior, but actively participating in her gaslighting campaign. "Marcus, there are hotel records proving she deliberately canceled my reservation and kept the money. There are recorded conversations of her spreading lies about me. This wasn't a miscommunication, it was calculated fraud and defamation." He waved dismissively, using the same gesture our mother employed when she wanted to minimize someone's concerns. "You're being way too dramatic about this. So she made a mistake with the hotel booking and got a little gossipy at a family gathering. Is that really worth destroying her reputation and embarrassing her in front of everyone?" I realized with growing horror that my mother hadn't spent the last 3 hours wallowing in defeat. She had spent them strategically rebuilding her narrative and recruiting my brother as her primary enforcer. "Marcus, she didn't just get a little gossipy. She told people I think I'm too good for this family. She claimed I demanded suite upgrades and threw tantrums when I didn't get them. She painted me as an entitled, ungrateful daughter while positioning herself as a generous martyr. Yeah, maybe she exaggerated a little bit, but come on, Sophia. You have to admit you've been pretty distant from the family since you moved to Chicago. You barely call you skip family events, and when you do show up, you always seem kind of judgmental about our lifestyle choices." Each word felt like a knife twisting in my chest. These were the exact lies our mother had been spreading, and my own brother was not only believing them but actively reinforcing them. Worse, he was using his position as the favored child to legitimize her version of events. "That's not true, and you know it. I call Mom every week. I've attended every major family celebration for the past 5 years, and I've never once criticized anyone's lifestyle choices." "Well, that's not how it comes across," Marcus said, with a shrug that conveyed years of internalized superiority. "Look, I'm not trying to attack you here. I'm trying to help you see that your reaction was completely disproportionate to what actually happened. Mom is devastated, Dad is furious with you, and you've ruined Sarah's wedding weekend over a hotel room." The manipulation was breathtaking in its sophistication. In less than 3 hours, my mother had managed to recruit my brother, turn my father against me, and reframe the entire situation so that I became the villain who had destroyed a family celebration out of petty spite. But the worst part was that Marcus genuinely seemed to believe every word he was saying. He wasn't consciously lying or deliberately betraying me. He was simply so accustomed to our family's dysfunctional dynamics that he couldn't recognize manipulation when it was happening right in front of him. "Marcus, I need you to listen to the recordings. I need you to see the hotel documentation. I need you to understand that this is part of a pattern of financial and emotional abuse that has been going on for years." "I don't need to see any recordings," he replied firmly. "I know our mother and I know you. Mom can be a little dramatic sometimes, but she's not some master manipulator running elaborate schemes against her own daughter. You're a smart woman, Sophia, but you're also incredibly stubborn, and you hold grudges forever. This whole thing feels like you finally found an excuse to unleash years of resentment over perceived slights. Perceived slights. He had just dismissed decades of differential treatment, emotional manipulation, and financial abuse as perceived slights that existed primarily in my imagination. The betrayal was complete when Marcus continued. I've talked to Dad, and we both think you need to apologize to Mom publicly, preferably during the reception toasts. You humiliated her in front of the family, and now you need to make it right. If you don't, there are going to be serious consequences for your relationship with this family. What kind of consequences? The kind where you find yourself uninvited to family gatherings until you learn how to treat your mother with the respect she deserves. I stood there in stunned silence as my brother, my supposed ally, my fellow survivor of our mother's favoritism, delivered an ultimatum that would force me to publicly validate her lies and accept responsibility for her crimes. The coalition I had built during the morning was crumbling before my eyes. Family members who had shared their own stories of manipulation were now avoiding eye contact, clearly unwilling to risk their own standing by continuing to support me against the united front of my mother and brother. By the time the reception began, I was more isolated than I had been before the confrontation. My mother had successfully turned my moment of truth-telling into evidence of my instability and vindictiveness while positioning herself as the victim of an ungrateful daughter's public attack. I had underestimated her completely, and now I was paying the price for my naivety. But as I watched my mother graciously accept condolences from family members, who now saw her as the wounded party, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to apologize, I wasn't going to back down, and I definitely wasn't going to let her win through manipulation and intimidation. The war was far from over. As the wedding reception continued around me, I found myself sitting alone at a corner table watching my family celebrate while systematically excluding me from conversations. My mother held court near the head table, graciously accepting sympathy from relatives who now viewed her as the victim of my unhinged public attack. The isolation was suffocating, but it also gave me time to think strategically. As a forensic accountant, I knew that emotions could cloud judgment, and I had let my anger drive my initial confrontation instead of building an airtight case first. My mother had outmaneuvered me precisely because she understood family dynamics better than I understood the importance of controlling the narrative. But she had made one critical mistake. She assumed I would fold under pressure the way I had throughout my childhood. She didn't realize that my career had taught me how to build cases against people who were far more sophisticated than a manipulative mother with boundary issues. I was reviewing the hotel documentation on my phone when someone slid into the empty chair beside me. "You look like someone who could use an ally right about now." I looked up to see Patricia Williams, Sarah's future mother-in-law, and a woman I had only met briefly during the pre-wedding festivities. She was elegantly dressed, probably in her mid-50s, with sharp eyes that suggested she missed very little. "I'm sorry, I don't think we've been properly introduced. I'm Sophia Martinez, the forensic accountant who just exposed her mother's embezzlement scheme in front of 40 witnesses," Patricia interrupted with a slight smile. "I've been watching this drama unfold with great interest." "Watching it unfold into a complete disaster, you mean?" "On the contrary," Patricia replied, pulling out her own phone. "I've been documenting it unfolding into a perfect case study of financial abuse and family manipulation. Would you like to see what I've gathered?" Patricia Williams, as it turned out, was not just a wedding guest. She was a retired family court judge with 30 years of experience dealing with cases involving financial abuse, elder exploitation, and family fraud. More importantly, she had spent the last 6 hours quietly interviewing family members and documenting everything she had witnessed. "Your mother's behavior today represents a textbook example of what we call financial abuse with reputation management," she explained, showing me detailed notes on her phone. "She commits financial crimes against family members, then uses emotional manipulation and reputation destruction to prevent her victims from seeking accountability." Patricia had recorded conversations with 8 different family members, each revealing additional instances of my mother's financial manipulation. But more significantly, she had also documented the systematic way my mother had rebuilt her narrative after our confrontation. She spent exactly 47 minutes alone with your brother before he approached you, Patricia noted. During that conversation, I observed her using classic manipulation techniques, emotional appeals to family loyalty, reframing her criminal behavior as innocent mistakes, and positioning you as the real threat to family stability. You recorded their conversation. I recorded everything, Patricia replied matter-of-factly, including her admitting to your father that she deliberately canceled your reservation because she wanted to teach you a lesson about taking family generosity for granted. My heart raced. She admitted it was deliberate. She admitted it was calculated punishment disguised as an innocent mistake. She also admitted to spreading lies about your attitude toward the family specifically to humble you and make you remember where you came from. Patricia handed me her phone, and I listened to crystal-clear audio of my mother explaining to my father how she had handled the Sophia situation by canceling my reservation and using the money to upgrade their accommodations. In her own words, she described her plan to make me look ungrateful and entitled by forcing me to either drive home or pay for my own room. "This is everything," I whispered, hardly believing what I was hearing. "This proves premeditation, deliberate fraud, and systematic defamation." "It gets better," Patricia continued. "I also have recordings of her coaching your brother on exactly what to say to you, including the specific language about perceived slights and disproportionate reactions. She literally scripted his betrayal. The evidence was overwhelming and indisputable. More importantly, it came from a source with unquestionable credibility, a retired judge who had spent decades dealing with family financial crimes. "Why are you helping me?" I asked, still processing the magnitude of what Patricia had uncovered. "Because I've seen too many families destroyed by financial predators who use emotional manipulation to avoid consequences for their crimes," she replied. "Your mother is a textbook case, and if she's not stopped now, she'll continue victimizing family members for years to come." Patricia had also gathered documentation that went far beyond the hotel reservation incident. Using her connections in the legal community, she had obtained credit reports showing my mother had used family members' social security numbers to open store credit cards over the past 3 years. She had collected bank statements proving my mother had been systematically borrowing money from my father's retirement account without his knowledge. Most damaging of all, she had uncovered evidence that my mother had been claiming me as a dependent on her tax returns for the past 2 years, despite the fact that I lived in Chicago and earned more than she did. "Your mother has been committing tax fraud, identity theft, and systematic financial abuse," Patricia explained. "The hotel reservation was just the tip of the iceberg. She's been running financial scams against family members for years and using emotional manipulation to keep everyone too guilty or confused to report her." Armed with Patricia's evidence, I now had everything I needed to completely destroy my mother's credibility and hold her legally accountable for her crimes. But Patricia had one more surprise for me. "I've already contacted the district attorney's office," she said calmly. "Given the scope of the financial crimes and the number of victims involved, they're interested in pursuing charges. But they'll need victim cooperation and testimony. You want me to press criminal charges against my own mother. I want you to stop a financial predator who happens to share your DNA," Patricia corrected. "Family relationships don't exempt people from the consequences of criminal behavior. If anything, financial abuse within families tends to escalate over time because the victims are too emotionally invested to seek help." As I sat there absorbing the magnitude of what Patricia had uncovered, I realized that my mother's betrayal was far worse than I had initially understood. The hotel reservation was just one incident in a years-long pattern of financial abuse that had victimized multiple family members while masquerading as loving maternal care. The war wasn't just about holding her accountable for one fraudulent transaction. It was about stopping a systematic predator who had been using family loyalty as a weapon against the people who trusted her most. And now, for the first time, I had the evidence and the ally I needed to win. The confrontation came during the reception toasts exactly as my mother had orchestrated it. She had spent the cocktail hour positioning herself for maximum sympathy, expecting me to either apologize publicly or storm out in defeat. She wasn't prepared for what actually happened. As the best man finished his speech and the microphone was passed around for family toasts, my mother stood gracefully, her face arranged in an expression of wounded dignity. "I want to say something about family loyalty and forgiveness," she began, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "Sometimes the people we love most disappoint us deeply, but we have to choose love over pride, understanding over anger." She was setting up my public humiliation, perfectly expecting me to either interrupt with an apology or sit silently while she delivered a masterclass in manipulation disguised as maternal wisdom. Instead, I stood up and began walking toward the front of the room. "Actually, Mom, I have something to say first." The room fell silent as I approached the microphone, but this time the energy was different. Patricia Williams sat near the head table, her phone recording everything. My Aunt Linda nodded encouragingly from her seat. Even some family members who had been avoiding me earlier looked curious rather than hostile. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sophia Martinez, and I need to share something important with all of you before my mother continues her speech about family loyalty." My mother's face went pale, but she couldn't stop me without causing a scene that would damage her carefully constructed image. "This morning I discovered that my mother had committed fraud against me by canceling my hotel reservation and keeping the refund for herself. When I confronted her about this theft, she responded by launching a campaign of lies designed to destroy my reputation within our family." I pulled out Patricia's phone and held it up for everyone to see. What I didn't know until an hour ago is that her crimes extend far beyond stealing my hotel money. With the help of Patricia Williams, a retired family court judge, we've uncovered evidence that my mother has been systematically committing financial fraud against multiple family members for years. The room erupted in shocked murmurs, but I continued speaking over the noise. "She has opened credit cards using family members' social security numbers without permission. She has been stealing money from my father's retirement account. She has been claiming me as a dependent on her tax returns despite the fact that I live in Chicago and support myself. Most importantly, she has been using emotional manipulation and family guilt to prevent her victims from reporting her crimes." My mother tried to interrupt, but her voice was drowned out by the gasps and exclamations from family members who were finally connecting dots they'd been ignoring for years. "Patricia, would you please play the recording of my mother admitting that she deliberately canceled my reservation to teach me a lesson?" The audio was crystal clear through the reception hall's sound system. My mother's own voice filled the room, explaining in detail how she had planned to humiliate me and pocket my money as punishment for what she perceived as my ingratitude and arrogance. The silence that followed was deafening. When the recording ended, I continued. "The district attorney's office is now investigating these crimes, and multiple family members have been contacted as potential victims and witnesses. My mother isn't a loving parent who made innocent mistakes. She's a financial predator who has been using our family loyalty as a weapon against us for years." My mother finally found her voice, but instead of denying the charges, she launched into a desperate attack that revealed the depth of her delusion. "You ungrateful, vindictive little witch!" she screamed, her mask finally slipping completely. "I sacrificed everything for you. I gave up my dreams, my career, my happiness to raise you, and this is how you repay me by destroying me in front of everyone." The words hung in the air like poison, confirming everything I had accused her of while simultaneously proving that she felt entitled to steal from and manipulate the people she claimed to love. My father, who had been silent throughout the entire confrontation, finally stood up. "Carmen, stop talking. Just stop talking." "David, you can't seriously believe. I believe the bank statements showing you've been stealing from our retirement account." He interrupted, his voice heavy with 27 years of accumulated disappointment. "I believe the credit card statements for accounts I never opened. I believe the recording of you admitting you committed fraud against our daughter to teach her a lesson." The collapse was swift and complete. Within minutes, family members were approaching me with apologies and their own stories of financial manipulation. My cousin David confirmed that the emergency loan he'd given her was based on fabricated medical bills. My Aunt Patricia revealed that my mother had been borrowing money for years while lying about family financial crises. Most importantly, my father announced that he would be cooperating fully with the district attorney's investigation and filing for separation the following week. 27 years of marriage, and I never realized I was living with a criminal, he said, his voice breaking with exhaustion and grief. The legal consequences unfolded over the following months with the efficiency I had expected. Patricia Williams served as a key witness, and her documentation proved invaluable in building the prosecution's case. My mother was ultimately charged with multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse. She pled guilty to avoid trial and received 2 years of probation, mandatory restitution to all victims, and court-ordered financial counseling. More satisfying than the legal victory was the reconstruction of family relationships without my mother's toxic influence. My father and I developed a genuine friendship for the first time in my adult life. My extended family began communicating directly instead of filtering everything through my mother's manipulative interpretations. The cousin network that had been fractured by years of her lies and schemes began healing through honest conversations and mutual support. I also discovered something unexpected: chosen family can be stronger than blood family. Patricia Williams became a mentor and friend who helped me understand that surviving financial abuse doesn't make you a victim. It makes you a survivor with unique insights and strengths. Linda and I grew closer than we'd ever been united by our shared experience and commitment to protecting other family members. Most importantly, I learned that standing up to family bullies isn't about revenge. It's about justice, healing, and protecting the people you love from predators who hide behind family loyalty. 6 months later, I received a letter from my mother asking for reconciliation and claiming she had learned from her mistakes. I didn't respond because I had learned something even more valuable. Forgiveness doesn't require relationship restoration, and family loyalty shouldn't require accepting abuse. The hotel reservation that started this whole story cost $234. The lessons I learned about family justice and personal strength were priceless. Has anyone in your family ever used guilt and manipulation to cover up their crimes against you? What would you do if you discovered a loved one had been systematically stealing from family members for years? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Sometimes sharing these stories helps other people recognize similar patterns in their own families. If this revenge story helped you understand financial abuse or family manipulation, please hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories about family drama, justice, and karma coming back around. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they don't have to accept abuse just because it comes from family. Thank you for watching my story and supporting my journey from victim to survivor to someone who refuses to let bullies win. Remember that family should lift you up, not tear you down for their own benefit. You deserve better than manipulation disguised as love, and you have the power to demand it.